Greetings to all of you. From my country, where it is the night crossing from the 6th of October into the 27th of October of the current Gregorian year 2025. Last night, which is of course the night from Saturday into Sunday, or even according to calendar date from the 25th into the 26th of October, being the very last weekend, many countries changed their clocks, if I may use the expression. In Europe, many countries have gone back to the normal time, also known as the winter time. Whereas in many other countries, perhaps in the southern hemisphere, they put their clock an hour ahead of the so-called winter time, calling it the summertime. The month of October, although I'm neither a historian nor a very great scholar in history, is supposed to be a month which was named not after a person, but after a calculation, as initially this had been the so-called 8th month of the year. But thanks to certain outstanding Roman leaders, namely Julius and Augustus, the 2 months which were added, namely July in English and August, extended the year and made the so-called the 8th month into the 10th month. No doubt, we forget that history from time to time as we carry out our daily task or even continue to live in luxury. But have we really been able to bury the past in ourselves, even on our own minds? As it is known to most people, both the Greeks, led by the Macedonians, namely that great fighter who is known as Alexander of Macedonia, or some people like to call him Alexander the Great, and also many of the Roman leaders who were ambitious enough to build up an empire which lasted not shorter than a millennium, 1,000 years. They were very well accustomed to maintain slaves, or even make slaves and maintain them, coming from those places whom they conquered. There is a legendary story that when Alexander the so-called Great, perhaps, or Alexander of Macedonia, came to India, he fought a battle, not many, because many of the rulers surrendered to his mighty power before even fights began, or fights had begun. But there is a name well known in the Indian history called Perus, who had a little kingdom, but he did not submit himself to the mighty Macedonian authority of Alexander of Macedonia. He fought the battle and lost it. When Perus was brought before Alexander as the so-called, the one who had been humiliated, and even whose kingdom had been conquered, according to certain historians, perhaps even Adriana or Adrian was one of them, it is recorded that Alexander asked a question to this defeated king. His kingdom had been taken for a moment, and it was, as I already said, conquered. And Alexander asked the question, how would you expect me to treat you? But Perused, even defeated, did not lose the spirit of leadership. His response was, and as it is replied, you are a king and so am I. I expect you to treat me as a king treats another king. According to those historians, Alexander was so moved by this unexpected reply that he returned Perus's kingdom. He did not continue the sovereignty over a foreign kingdom. History has shown that slavery was considered to be one of the worst humane error ever made in the history of humankind as a whole. People thought that they could not merely dictate, but rule, exploit, oppress, tyrannize, and even destroy the weaker ones. Alexander, though, was victorious in Peru's kingdom, showed that great spirit of commitment, recognized the weak equal to himself. And although some 2,300 years have gone by since the demise of Alexander of Macedonia, we, the Indians who had been conquered by him, still regard him and respect his personality. Not because he was the conqueror, because, and far more, I should say, more importantly rather, because he showed the spirit of recognizing others, even the weakest of the weak, as his equal, as it was seen a little later by that greatest of all the kings ever to be born into a family of carpenters, Jeshua, or more popularly known in the history of the Anglo-Saxon recognition, Jesus Christ, who taught his disciples and said quite clearly, he who wants to be the greatest among you must be the slave of all. But did not merely utter these words, but proved this even on the night before his death, by washing his disciples' feet, even as a slave would do to their masters, or I should say to his master. The past history might have been buried, but they haunt us from their graves. This week is going to be a decisive week in Southeast Asia, when a summit takes place, conferenced by various member states of this continent, even attended by certain Western leaders, even the mightiest man of our day. No doubt there will be discussions trade, business, and even tariff, most probably. But what about slavery? I referred a moment ago to the history of Rome and Macedonia or Greece, where slavery was very common. And I said, we have forgotten that past. But have we truly been able to bury slavery? If we could, I would most certainly be one of the happiest men in the world at this very moment. No, slavery continues even today, more vividly, widely, more cruelly, and most certainly, most humanely, comparing to the past history. Perhaps we do not crucify our slaves like the Macedonians, the Greeks and the Romans, and many other nations of the world. Perhaps we do not burn them alive. Perhaps we do not whip them today, as it was found in certain countries of the Western world. Forgive me for not mentioning them by names, but slavery is being practiced more inhumanely than ever before. Unlike many great leaders of the world, we forget today to recognize our fellow global citizens as our equal, perhaps even our own countrymen and women. We have not come even a single step forward as far as our mentality is concerned. The devastating earthquake taking place in Turkey hardly 3 years ago, the wars continuing in the eastern parts of Europe for almost 4 years, the wars which were fought in the Middle East for longer than 2 years, the devastating consequences of both human folly and nature, causing too many young people to become orphans, make very easy victims for slave traders, even though perhaps unofficially, illegally, yet are being continued. It will be a grave error on the part of our leaders if they forgot this fact, even while meeting in the course of the summit taking place during this week, which has just begun. There is no greater award than every single day when we retire after hard work and can say to ourselves, we did something, however little that may be, for someone else, even someone belonging to our globe or our fellow global citizen. If we consider him as our equal or her as our equal, we take a step forward. And if we could realize this and defeat the modern slavery, the inhumane slavery of this very day. That award is greater than any other award given to any person by any organization, whether this be the Nobel Prize, an Oscar, or any other award. Our greatest award we can confer upon ourselves, not by force, but by our good deeds. As my motto goes on, good deeds of ours, however great or small, can make our world a better place for you and me and all. I bid you a very good night with all due respect, my most beloved, dear and respected fellow global citizens.